Yo, what's up, Ragamuffin? In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to make this dude, and this is the 4 Scraphook combiner: Scraphook, Lockdown, Axle Grease, and Tow Line. And I'm also going to be kind of narrating in the background my experience with Hasbro over at Toy Fair, and you can see he's a little wobble, but he's good, okay? Let me cut away, and I'll be right back. All right, per these tutorials, I'm going to be dismantling him part by part, and then I'll show you how everything comes together. You can see that he has a little bit of wobble, right? And it's because he's kind of composed. He's composed horizontally, if that makes sense, versus vertically, which typically would kind of like put the center of gravity and the balance going downward, but his is kind of left to right. And well, anyway, let me just start kind of showing you versus just telling you. And yeah, about Toy Fair, with regard to Hasbro, I should have kept in mind that this is I'm going to move him to the side actually, so as not to mess up the focus. I should have realized that this is an industry event only, and so a lot of these things are by appointment, and this is not a consumer affair where you could just kind of like show up and browse and stuff like that. And so I should have been mindful of that, especially with a giant like Hasbro, right? Anyway, to make this arm, you basically need 3 of the calves. In terms of how you arrange them, well, that's gonna be up to you. But at the top we have AG, we have Scraphook, and then we have Tow Line. You can see he's plugged into the tire. Maybe you can't, but yeah, he's just plugged into the tire. And then this secondary one, this is just plugged into the bottom of the foot. And this is supposed to be some type of like claw, right? Some type of hook. Perhaps it would have been better with axle grease, because I think Axle has more of a hook type gimmick on the front, but regardless. And then we have one of the engine bits, one of the engine blocks, and then we have the shin guard over here, right? And that's pretty much the arm. It does kind of have elbow movement, but pretty limited. You can pivot on here too, but there's a lot of collision and stuff, so it is somewhat limited. But anyway. So I started walking over to the Hasbro booth after I spent some time at Blockies in the morning, and I didn't know that it was a closed off event. I was just like, I had at the Blockies booth, I had bumped into that toy guy in TM Reviews, and we were talking about Hasbro, and that we were going to venture there, and we were all hoping that like, oh, maybe Mark's there, maybe Evan's there, maybe BMAX there, and stuff like that. And I was hoping that would happen. And anyway, sorry. Just to interrupt myself, I just want to show the other side, and you can see they're identical, more or less, right? Just the color coding is a little bit different. But in terms of like mold-wise, I kept it consistent. The Lockdown axle grease mold is at the top, then the Scraphook, and then the Tow Line at the bottom, right? So we were hoping that we would encounter one of those cats. Okay, wait, really quick. The way the legs are connected, you see this, how it's going side to side. This is the horizontal thing that I was talking to you about. And they're just plugged in. They're sandwiched by the axle grease lockdown, the accessory, right? So you just kind of unplug those. And now we're going to look at the leg. The leg is basically the axle grease torso, right? Easy to understand, right? There's nothing too different or difficult. We've just opened up the shoulder flaps, and on one side I've given it the shin guard for Scraphook, and on the bottom we have the axle grease foot. But in order to support all this weight, we have one of the exhausts helping with the heel stability, and another exhaust helping with the heel stability. There are actually 3 on the bottom. And this second one is just in here holding the spike tire just for visual effect, and I think that looks pretty cool. And that's pretty much the leg. And this is on the inside. Hold on, I got a burp. Sorry, I just had Korean food right now, and I'm also drinking carbonated water, and so that's gonna make me burp. But we were hoping that we'd encounter these cats, but we all went our separate ways. I spent a little more time at the Blockies booth, and just showing you the axle grease leg, by the way. And everything is identical. I did very intentionally utilize the Tow Line tire on Axle's side, because I wanted the green to fit with the green, and so there's a little bit of color pairing over there, right? And as I was making my way to the Hasbro booth, I bumped into Mark, and I was just like, Mark Clonus, and then he was like, yeah. And I had a mask off. I had a mask on, and the reason like I'm wearing a mask is I have I'll just kind of tell you guys right now. I have some pretty like serious surgery that I'm having to undertake, and I can't get sick for that. And so I had a mask on the whole the whole affair. And he was like, yeah. And then I took my mask off. And even though Mark and I are connected on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and like we've kind of like talked, I've never met him in person. And like, yeah, he's kind of tall. I think he's over 6 feet tall. And I was like, dude, I'm Botbender. And he was like, oh, what's up? And you know, it was really cool. He gave me my flowers, meaning like he recognized who I was and told me he like loved all my bits that I made, and that like, yeah, that the folks at Hasbro and Transformers were a fan of what I do. And I was like, holy smokes, you know. And I mean, I'm trying to give him his flowers. I mean, we're going the opposite direction and stuff like that. But hold up, before I get too carried away with the story, the bodies are really unique in terms of the way they're connected. The front torso of axle grease connecting to toe line is something that I've done before, but this is something brand new that I've never done. And I'm actually pretty pleased with how this came out. And so, all right, let me just start with the outside over here. This is the Scraphook arm. This is the toe line arm, and they're connected right over here, right? They're connected using that toe bit, that toe hitch or whatever. And these are purely aesthetics. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. They are connecting these things together, but this is already connected. And I'll show you that in a second. But so we have the torso connected, and then we have the axle's arms on the outside, and it's hugging two of the accessories. But now we have these bits, and that's going to go in there, and that's going to go in there. But now what's happening is we have introduced an external locking mechanism on the outside via this. It's not the most secure thing in the world, but it is decently secure, and it looks pretty cool as well. And so, yeah, so this ends up connecting these two, but these two are not what is connecting this. But yeah, I gave Marcus flowers. I was basically saying like, dude, I appreciate you and the rest of the gang just being such cool members of the fandom, but representing us on the corporate side, you know. And I was just like, dude, I really appreciate it. And then as this was happening, a Hasbro representative, like, I don't know, I got the sense that she was somebody high up. That's the feeling that I got. I had seen her at the Blockies booth. I don't remember her name, but she was walking by, and then Mark stopped her, and he was like, hey, this is Botbender. Like, he takes all, and he started going off about, like, you know, about what I do, the builds that I make, and how creative and how awesome. Then she was like, oh, how cool. And yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, I could tell that he was genuinely, like, hyped about it, and, like, kind of saying, like, I'm an evangelist. He was pointing to me, like, yeah, he's like an ally. He's an evangelist of, like, what we do. And she was like, oh, nice. And I said, what's up to her? And I was like, I saw you at the Blockies booth earlier. And she was like, oh. And I told her, I was like, hey, I'm experimenting to see if there's any type of product compatibility between Blockies, because I heard that they use 5mm. Unfortunately, I found out they don't. They use something that's really close to 5mm, but it's not. It's too loose for this. And that's kind of a bummer, right? But this side, sorry, just interrupting myself. This side is pretty much the same. These two, I mean, here, let me just take this whole thing off. These arms on the outside connected together using the toe mechanism. And then these on the inside, they're not really locking anything in place, but they are becoming the holder, so to speak, of the legs, right? And so everything kind of works together. And so yeah. So but anyway, yeah. And then so I said, hey, I don't want to keep you, Mark. You know, I'm gonna let you do your thing. And then, but Mark was asking me, he's like, hey, are you on any of the lists and stuff like that? And like in the gaming conventions, there's parties everywhere. Everyone's throwing parties and stuff, and you got to be on a list. You got to know somebody and stuff. And he was kind of like, hey, are you on the list? Are you going blah blah blah? And I was like, oh, no, man, I'm just here doing promotional work for Blockies. And so. No, and then he's like, we're gonna get you on the list, but I don't know, nothing happened, and I didn't want to bother him about it and be like, hey man, remember you said you're gonna get me on a list, and I didn't bother doing that. But that was cool that he volunteered that. Maybe next time if I go, I'll ask him about that quote unquote list. But then when I got to the Hasbro booth, man, everything was behind lock and key. You needed an appointment. There were like security people, and that's when I just realized, like, oh, my big mistake. I should have thought of this ahead of time, scheduling something with Hasbro. And there were toys. I just couldn't get to them, basically. You had to sign up and go through like a little maze and stuff like that. But that's on me. That's totally on me. And then when I did try to sign up on the spot, they're like, everything's booked. And so I was like, yeah, of course, everything's booked. In terms of how these two are connected together, It's just Scraphook, right, in his normal like torso bot mode, and then we have the doors opened up, and the same, almost the same, I would say, on the other side. But here, let me just peel these off, because these doors are connected to Towline's legs, and Scraphook's legs are connected to Towline's doors, and so it's just like that, right? If you had flipped this over and flipped his head out, it would look identical to this. That's the only difference over here. You see that? And hey, this looks like Skeletor in terms of the colors, Skeletor's armor and his skin, kind of, right? Yeah. Anyway, so we're just connecting this, that. Oh. We're just we're connecting this on the outside, and dude, there's a hole in my finger. You see that? Healing up right now. Sucks. But that goes over there. And that goes there. And that goes there. And this is a nice chunky monkey configuration. And then we have the little exhausts over here, but this is just, you know, this is decoration, but this is solid. Then we're gonna get this. Plug that into the door. And then we're going to get this, and we're going to plug that into the chest. Then we're going to get this, and then we're going to plug this into the top of that section. Not on the tire, but on the topmost area. And from the aerial view, you can see that's what it kind of looks like. Yeah. We'll do the same thing for this side. We'll plug this in. But yeah, so I didn't get to see anything at Hasbro. But I saw TMR's review for, what is it? Wait, is this right? Yeah, for Mask. TMR reviews for Mask, and John Warden was doing the walkthrough, and he was the host, and I was like, oh my goodness, John Warden is here. If you don't know who John Warden is, get familiar, look him up. He is Mr. Transformers, Mr. Hasbro. The franchise would not be where it's at. Especially the toy space, would not be where it's at without his direct involvement. He is, I call him the embodiment of Primus. He's like a visionary. He was like the head of basically Hasbro Toys, helping with a lot of the designs and just kind of play patterns. And yeah, and I got to meet him on the second day. And dude, the craziest thing is he knew who I was. And I had been practicing, you know, introducing myself. I mean, I shared a bit of the story already. Like, I'd been practicing how to introduce myself. Like, hey, hello, Mr. Warden. I am a prominent Transformers fan motor, and I'm a big fan of your work. You know, I'd been practicing something. But yeah, they introduced me. They were just like, oh, John, you know, this gentleman's been waiting to talk to you. And then he was like, hey, you heard it, learn about Mask? And before I could say something, he looked at my badge and he was like, Botbender. He said Orange A. He was like, Botbender, Orange A. And I'm not trying to correct him, be like, oh, it's actually Orange, sir. But I was just like, you know who I am? And he's like, I follow you on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, I follow you on Instagram too. You're Warden 5. And dude, he was just telling me, he was like, dude, everybody at Hasbro knows who you are. Like from the Transformers team, like everybody knows who you are. And we really respect your work and we love what you're doing. And I'd want to be like, oh, but hey, I started promoting third party through my sponsor and some KO. I was like, you know what, now's not the time or place to talk about that. And I was still blown away. He was just like, yeah, man. He was like, everybody knows what you're doing, and we love what you're doing. Like, we want to evangelize what you're doing. It's like, you know, this play pattern that you're doing. It's like we want other people to do it too. And dude, and he was just giving me my props. I absolutely could not believe what was like happening and stuff. And then he and I like geeked out about like Mask. And I hung out for a little bit and stuff, but he was busy. And so he was just like, and so he kind of cut it short to it later on. He was just kind of like, hey, he's like, hey, thanks for coming by. And basically I was just like, hey, dude, I was like, we wouldn't be where we're at without you, John. I was like, so I just want to say thank you so much. And he's like, oh, I appreciate it. But yeah, I got to give him his flowers too. And it was such a cool moment, man. I never thought I'd be able to meet John Warden, let alone him know who I am and acknowledge me and kind of give me my flowers, so to speak. I was really blown away by that experience. And going back to this guy, I know I've been jumping all over, talking about my experience, but 4 of the Scraphook molds, the ones that have all been released so far, Scraphook, Lockdown, Axle Grease, and Towline. If you got them, you can make this. If you have 3, you can make the Centaur, the one that I've been calling the Oracle. But yeah, if you got 4, and I showed this one to John Warden as well. I was like, hey, this is an all Scraphook combiner. Anyway, because I had a bunch of pictures on my phone, all like on favorites that I wanted to show him. But yeah, if you got all 4, you can make this at home. I hope this tutorial has not been too drawn out, and like I said, with me interspersing this anecdotal stuff. But anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Bye.